At 3:17 in the morning, morning, a pregnant woman stood alone in a $40 million penthouse, holding her wedding ring over a glass of bourbon. Her billionaire husband had just walked through the door, smelling like another woman's perfume. He did not even bother to shower.
Done.
But here is the thing. She was not crying, she was not begging, she was not asking for an explanation.
He did this to many women.
She was smiling.
Here is the
because
proof.
What he did not know, what he could never have imagined, was that she had been planning this moment for 72 hours.
Mr. Blackwell,
and in
did
exactly
you defraud your
47
investors?
seconds,
How
that
do you
ring would
respond to
hit
the
the bottom of his
allegations?
glass,
Is
and
it
his
true you're
entire
facing
world
life
would
in
begin
prison?
to collapse. But her nightmare was just beginning. He would freeze her accounts. He would try to take her baby. He would have her arrested. He would turn the whole world against her. And then, from the most unexpected place, came the one person who would help her burn his empire to the ground. His own mistress. This is the story of Rachel Morgan. And trust me, you are not ready for what happens next. At 3:17 in the morning, the elevator doors opened and my husband walked in smelling like another woman's perfume. I had been waiting for 6 hours, not to cry, not to beg, not to scream accusations into the expensive silence of our Manhattan penthouse. No, I had been waiting to end everything. The ring I had worn for 7 years was already off my finger, and in exactly 47 seconds, it would be sitting at the bottom of his favorite bourbon glass. My name is Rachel Morgan, or at least, that is who I was before I became Mrs. Marcus Blackwell, before I traded my identity for a fairy tale that turned out to be written in disappearing ink, before I gave up everything I had built, everything I was, for a man who could not even be bothered to shower before coming home to his pregnant wife. I stood near the window, wrapped in a pale silk robe that brushed just above my swollen belly. 5 months along and glowing, everyone said. But they did not see me at 3 in the morning, watching headlights crawl across the ceiling, counting the hours since my husband had left for what he called a business dinner. The city stretched below me, 35 floors of glittering indifference. Manhattan does not care about broken hearts. It just keeps moving, keeps pulsing, keeps swallowing people whole and spitting out whatever's left. Marcus did not notice me at first. He was too busy loosening his tie, humming some tune I did not recognize, wearing that smug grin he always wore when he thought he had gotten away with something. His $1,000 shoes tapped softly against the marble floors. His cologne, the one I had bought him for our anniversary, was barely detectable beneath something else, something floral, something that was not me. Then he saw me, and his humming stopped. "Jackie?" He blinked as if I were an apparition. "What are you doing up?" I said nothing, just stared. His smirk wavered. A flicker of something crossed his face. Confusion, maybe, or the first cold whisper of fear. "I told you I had meetings tonight," he added, his voice dropping lower. More cautious now. Still, I did not speak. I simply moved toward the bar, my bare feet soundless against the cold stone. Every step was precise. Every second stretched like elastic, ready to snap. "You had champagne," I finally said, motioning to the unopened bottle resting in its bucket, a gift from a client, he had told me when it arrived yesterday. Marcus swallowed. It was for a celebration. The Henderson deal closed. I nodded slowly, the hint of a smile curling one side of my lips. Not a happy smile. Something else entirely. I picked up the cut crystal glass he used for special occasions, the one engraved with his initials. With deliberate calm, I poured a generous splash of the bourbon he kept hidden behind the imported wines. The liquid caught the dim light, amber and warm. Then came the moment that cracked our world in half. I slipped my wedding ring from my finger. The diamond caught the light one last time, brilliant and cold, and then I dropped it. A soft metallic clink. The ring sank to the bottom, spinning once before settling like a secret finally revealed. Marcus's breath caught. His bravado vanished. The man who had built an empire, who had made grown men tremble in boardrooms, stood frozen in his own foyer. "Jacqueline," he whispered. It had been years since he called me by my full name. "I hope she was worth it," I said, meeting his gaze. My voice was not loud, but it was final, solid, a verdict delivered in the quiet hours when most of the city was sleeping. "What are you talking about?" he tried. "Please, let us talk about this." I am done talking. I pulled an envelope from my robe pocket and slid it across the counter toward him. Divorce papers, signed, dated. My lawyer had notarized them just that afternoon. You will get the official notice by morning, I said. Wait. He stepped forward, panic rising in his voice. You are not serious. This is crazy. You are being emotional. I held up my hand. Do not come closer. And he froze. For years, Marcus Blackwell had been the man who moved mountains, closed billion-dollar deals, and made people bend to his will. He had built skyscrapers that touched the clouds. He had been featured on magazine covers, invited to the White House, celebrated as a visionary. But in that moment, standing in the penthouse he had bought to prove something to the world, he was just a man who had finally been caught. I looked him over slowly. The wrinkled shirt, the lipstick stain near his collar, barely visible but there. The faint trace of perfume clinging to his skin like guilt. And I laughed, not a joyful sound, a cold, dry, almost pitying laugh. You did not even bother to shower, I whispered. Jackie, you are overreacting. This is nothing. It did not mean anything. I tilted my head, studying him like I was seeing him clearly for the first time. It meant enough that you lied, I said. It meant enough that you risked everything, and you thought I would never find out. He opened his mouth, but no excuse came out. For once in his life, Marcus Blackwell had nothing to say. I'm pregnant, Marcus. I placed my hand on my belly. Your child is growing inside me. And while I have been throwing up every morning, worrying about the baby, worrying about us, you have been out there playing Bachelor of the Year. I looked around our opulent penthouse, the grand piano that no one played, the modern art that cost more than my childhood home, the coldness disguised as success. I gave you my love, I continued, my loyalty, my body, my future, and you gave it away for a night. I made a mistake, he muttered, his voice cracking. Do not do this. I picked up my coat from the back of a nearby chair. The leather bag I had packed 3 days ago was waiting by the elevator. I did not do this, I said. You did. I am just finally done pretending. Where are you going? He demanded. Somewhere you will not follow. I walked toward the elevator, my heels clicking against the marble. The sound echoed through the cavernous space like a countdown. Marcus rushed forward, reaching out. Wait, Jackie, I can fix this. Just give me a chance. I turned slowly, my hand resting on my belly where our daughter was growing. A daughter who would never know her parents together. A daughter I would raise alone if I had to. I gave you 100 chances, I said quietly, and every time, I chose you. Tonight, for the first time, I am choosing me. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. Jackie, he called out, his voice breaking. Please. I looked at him one last time. The man I had loved. The man I had believed in. The man who had turned out to be nothing more than a beautifully wrapped lie. Goodbye, Marcus. The doors closed. As the elevator descended, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the polished steel. A woman I barely recognized stared back at me. Tired, pregnant, terrified, but also for the first time in years, free. I placed my hand on my belly and whispered to my daughter, Your father is an idiot, sweetheart, but at least you got my nose. The elevator reached the lobby. I stepped out into the night, into the cold December air, into a future I could not see but was finally ready to face. Behind me, 35 floors up, Marcus Blackwell stood alone in his empire of glass and steel, staring at a bourbon glass with a wedding ring at the bottom. He did not know it yet, but he had just lost the only person who had ever truly seen him. And I did not know it yet either. But this was only the beginning. I was not always the wife of a billionaire. I was not always the woman in designer gowns, smiling for cameras at charity galas, pretending my life was perfect. Before I became Rachel Blackwell, I was Rachel Morgan from Millbrook, Ohio. Population 8,000 on a good day. The kind of town where everyone knew your business. The highlight of the year was the county fair, and the fanciest restaurant was the diner near the train tracks. My father, Henry Morgan, was a mechanic. He smelled of engine oil and cheap coffee, and his hands were always stained with grease no matter how hard he scrubbed. But those hands taught me how to change a tire before I was 13 years old. Rachel, he said to me one afternoon while I struggled with the lug nut, never depend on anyone to rescue you. Learn to rescue yourself. I was 12. I did not understand what he meant then. I thought he was just talking about flat tires. He was talking about everything. My mother, Linda Morgan, worked as a waitress at that same diner for 30 years. She had dreams once, she told me. Dreams of seeing Paris, of writing poetry, of living somewhere the horizon did not stop at cornfields. But life had other plans, and she made peace with them the way women of her generation often did, quietly, without complaint. Still, she read poetry aloud while folding laundry. She danced in the kitchen when she thought no one was watching. And she gave me advice that I should have listened to more carefully. Always keep something in your own name, baby girl, she told me once. Your grandmother taught me that. It is not about trust, it is about survival. I was 19 when my father died, lung cancer. The diagnosis came in March, and by August, he was gone. The medical bills totaled $147,000. Insurance covered a fraction. The rest fell on us like a building collapsing. My mother took extra shifts. I dropped out of the state university I had just started attending and enrolled in community college instead. I worked 3 jobs while carrying a full course load. Morning shift at a coffee shop, afternoons as a receptionist at a real estate office, nights as a server at whatever restaurant would have me. I was exhausted. I was grieving. I was drowning. But Morgan women do not break. We bend and then we spring back. That was my mother's favorite saying. I heard it so many times it became the rhythm of my heartbeat. At 22, I transferred to NYU on a scholarship I had earned through sheer stubbornness and an essay about loss that made the admissions committee cry. I majored in accounting because I wanted to understand money. I wanted to control it instead of letting it control me. I kept working through college. The coffee shop became my second home. I knew the regulars by name, memorized their orders, smiled through exhaustion because tips meant textbooks and textbooks meant a future. That is where I met him. Marcus Blackwell walked into my coffee shop on a Tuesday morning in October. He was wearing a wrinkled suit and had dark circles under his eyes. He looked like every other overworked Manhattan professional except for his smile. That smile transformed his whole face. Just a regular coffee, he said. Nothing fancy. I remember thinking how refreshing that was. Most customers in that neighborhood ordered drinks with 7 ingredients and complained if the foam was not perfect. Long night? I asked, pouring his coffee. Long year, he replied, but things are looking up. He came back the next day and the day after that. Always regular coffee, always that smile. He asked me questions about myself, actually listened to the answers, remembered details from our previous conversations. On the 3rd week, he asked me to dinner. I should tell you something first, he said, looking almost embarrassed. I own this building. I stared at him. You what? The building. The coffee shop is in. I own it. I did not want to say anything because I liked being just a guy in a wrinkled suit to you. I should have run. I should have recognized the power imbalance. I should have listened to that small voice in the back of my head whispering that men who hide things will always hide things. But I was 24 years old, drowning in student debt, still grieving my father, and standing in front of a man who looked at me like I was magic. So I said yes. The courtship was a whirlwind. Marcus took me to dive bars and hole-in-the-wall restaurants, not the fancy places I expected. He told me about growing up poor in the Bronx, about his father leaving when he was 6, about building his empire from nothing. He made me feel like we were the same. 2 survivors who had clawed their way out of circumstances that should have swallowed us whole. He proposed after 18 months. The ring was vintage, he said, his grandmother's. I found out years later that he had it custom made to look old. The first lie in a collection I did not know he was building. We married in a small ceremony in Ohio, just 30 people. My mother cried happy tears. His mother, who had worked herself to exhaustion so he could succeed, sat in the front row beaming with pride. I wore a simple dress, he wore that smile. For a moment, just a moment, I believed in fairy tales. The first year of marriage was good. We lived in a modest apartment in Soho. We ate takeout on the floor, watched documentaries until midnight, dreamed about the future together. He sent me texts in the middle of meetings that said things like, thinking about your smile, and cannot wait to come home to you. Then the success grew. The deals multiplied. The apartment turned into a penthouse. The takeout turned into private chefs. The texts stopped coming. By year 2, he had convinced me to quit my job. Focus on us, he said. I make enough for both of us. By year 3, my name had been removed from our joint accounts. For tax purposes, he explained. By year 4, I realized I had no credit cards in my own name, no savings I could access independently, no career to return to. I had given everything up to support his rise, and somewhere along the way I had disappeared. My mother's voice echoed in my head. Always keep something in your own name. I had not listened, and now I had nothing. Year 5 brought the coldness. He came home later and later, spoke to me less and less, looked through me instead of at me. Year 6, I got pregnant. He seemed happy at first, spinning me around the living room, talking about legacy and family and futures. But within weeks, the distance returned. The late nights multiplied. The excuses grew thinner. Year 7, I found the receipt. The Rosewood Hotel, presidential suite, charged to his business expense account. I did not confront him immediately. I had learned enough about survival to know that information is power, and I needed to gather mine before I made any moves. So I called the hotel, pretended to be his assistant, confirming a reservation. The concierge was helpful. Yes, Mr. Blackwell's weekly booking was still active. Same suite, same time, 6 months running, weekly, for 6 months. I drove to the hotel that night, sat in the parking garage for 2 hours, convincing myself I was wrong, that there was some explanation, that the man I had married would never betray me so completely. Then I saw them exit together, Marcus and a woman I recognized from his company parties, tall, blonde, elegant in a predatory way. His hand rested on her lower back as they walked to his car, laughing at some private joke. Victoria Crane, his vice president of development. I sat in my car until my tears ran out. Then I called my best friend. Denise Williams answered on the second ring. We had met during my NYU years when she was studying nursing, and we both worked at the same campus coffee shop. She was loud, loyal, and the only person from my old life who had never treated me differently after I married money. Girl, she said when I told her what I saw, what do you need? I will be there in an hour. I need a lawyer, I said, and maybe a shovel. Denise paused. Let us start with the lawyer. 3 days later, I stood in my penthouse at 3 in the morning, waiting for my husband to come home from his mistress. 3 days of planning, 3 days of photographing documents and consulting attorneys and preparing myself for war. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed man named Robert Hayes, had delivered devastating news. The prenup I had signed at 25, naive and in love, limited me to $50,000 and no property. Unless I could prove fraud or hidden assets, I would walk away with almost nothing. Nothing except my daughter, and that was everything. So when Marcus walked through that door, still wearing another woman's perfume, I was ready. Not ready for what came next, of course. No one is ever ready for how badly things can fall apart, but ready to take the first step. The ring dropped into the bourbon glass, and Rachel Morgan began to remember who she was. Victoria Crane was not what I expected. In my darkest moments, I had imagined my husband's affair as a cliché, a young intern, a dazzled socialite, someone easily dismissed as a momentary weakness, a midlife crisis in a short skirt. Victoria was none of those things. She was 34 years old, closer to my age than I wanted to admit. Harvard Business School, top of her class. Old money Boston family that had lost everything in the 2008 financial crisis. She had rebuilt herself through ruthlessness and strategy, climbing the corporate ladder with calculated precision. She was also brilliant. I learned this during the 72 hours between discovering the affair and confronting Marcus. I researched her obsessively, the way you research a disease that is killing you. Every article, every interview, every social media post she had made in the last decade. What I found terrified me. Victoria had been at Blackwell Development for 5 years. She had started as a project manager and risen to vice president in record time. Every major deal Marcus had closed in the last 3 years had her fingerprints on it. But more importantly, every woman who had been close to Marcus during those years had been quietly pushed out. His female assistant of 8 years suddenly resigned. The marketing director who used to attend every executive dinner was transferred to the Chicago office. Even my presence at company events had been gradually reduced. I had assumed Marcus wanted to keep his work and home life separate. Now I understood. Victoria had been clearing the board. She had not seduced my husband. She had acquired him. Like a hostile takeover. The night I discovered them at the hotel, I sat in Denise's cramped queen's apartment and laid out everything I had learned. Denise listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. When I finished, she let out a long breath. "So this woman has been planning this for years?" she asked. "It looks that way." And Marcus, genius businessman Marcus, did not see it coming? I almost laughed. Marcus sees what he wants to see. That is both his greatest strength and his biggest weakness. And you, what do you see? I looked down at my hands, my bare ring finger, the slight swell of my belly. "I see that I have nothing," I said quietly. "No money, no career, no leverage. The prenup is airtight. My lawyer says I could fight it for years and still would lose, boy, bam." Denise leaned forward. "But you are fighting anyway." It was not a question. She knew me too well. "I have to," I said, "for her." I touched my stomach. I will not let my daughter grow up thinking her mother was weak. I will not let her learn that when things get hard, you just give up. So what is the plan? That was the question I had been wrestling with for 3 sleepless nights. What do you do when the person who promised to protect you becomes the one you need protection from? "First I leave," I said. I drop the ring, I serve the papers, I walk out with my head high. And then? Then I figure out the rest. Denise raised an eyebrow. "That is not much of a plan." "It is the only one I have." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Then we will make it work. Morgan women do not break, remember?" I smiled despite myself. "You have been talking to my mother." "She texted me, said to remind you." The next morning I went to see Robert Hayes. His office was in a modest building in Midtown, nothing like the gleaming towers where Marcus did business. But Robert came highly recommended by a friend of a friend, and more importantly, he was willing to work with me despite my limited resources. "Let us be realistic about your options," Robert said, spreading papers across his desk. "The prenuptial agreement is comprehensive. In a standard divorce proceeding, you would receive $50,000 and no claim to property or business assets." "And custody?" I asked. The only thing that really mattered." Robert hesitated. "Joint custody is typical in these situations, unless one parent can be proven unfit." "Marcus is having an affair. Does that count?" "Adultery affects asset division in some states, but not custody. The court's only concern is what is best for the child." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. So he could actually get partial custody, even if he cheated? "The affair is between you and him as spouses. It does not make him a bad father." Robert paused. "At least not legally." I stared at the papers. All those words, all those clauses I had signed 7 years ago without truly understanding what I was giving away. My younger self had been so certain that love would be enough, that trust would protect me. "There has to be something," I said, "some way to fight this." Robert leaned back in his chair. "There is one possibility. The prenup has a fraud clause. If you can prove that Marcus hid assets during the marriage or engaged in illegal activity, the entire agreement could be voided." "What kind of illegal activity?" "Tax fraud, bribery, money laundering. Anything that shows he was not operating in good faith when the prenup was signed." I thought about Marcus, his empire, the deals that had seemed too good to be true, the late-night meetings he never fully explained. How would I even find something like that? "Carefully," Robert said, and quietly. "If he suspects you are digging, he will bury everything deeper. You need evidence he does not know you are looking for." That night, after my dramatic exit from the penthouse, I sat on Denise's couch with a pint of ice cream and tried to process everything. "You want ice cream or wine?" Denise had asked when I arrived, mascara streaked, hands shaking. "I am pregnant," I reminded her. "Ice cream it is. I will have wine for both of us." Now, hours later, the ice cream was gone, and so was half of Denise's wine. I watched her pour another glass and wondered how I had ended up here. 32 years old, pregnant, sitting in a one-bedroom apartment in Queens with everything I owned in a single suitcase. He looked so shocked, I said, replaying the scene for the 100th time. When I dropped the ring, like he could not believe I would actually leave. Of course he was shocked, Denise replied. Men like Marcus think they are untouchable. They spend so long being worshipped that they forget they are just people. He said I was being emotional, dramatic. Denise snorted. Classic. Woman finally stands up for herself and suddenly she is the crazy one. My phone buzzed, a joyful call from Marcus. That made 47 since I had left. You going to answer? Denise asked. No. Good, she raised her glass. To new beginnings. I lifted my water glass. To survival. We clinked our drinks together, and for a moment, just a moment, I felt something that might have been hope. It would not last. 2 days later, the first headline appeared. Billionaire's unstable wife abandons marriage. Sources say mental health crisis. Marcus had not just been calling to apologize. He had been preparing his counterattack, and I had walked right into his trap. The article was everywhere. Page 6, Business Insider, Twitter, Facebook. Every corner of the internet seemed to be discussing the erratic behavior of Rachel Blackwell, who had abandoned her billionaire husband during a mental health episode. I read the article on Denise's phone, my hand shaking. Sources close to the couple, it said, report that Mrs. Blackwell has been struggling with pregnancy-related psychological issues for months. Mr. Blackwell is said to be devastated and hopes his wife will seek the help she needs. They were painting me as crazy, the hysterical pregnant woman who could not handle the pressures of high society. This is insane, Denise said, reading over my shoulder. He is actually trying to make you look insane. It is working. I scrolled through the comments. Women I had met at charity events were expressing concern for my well-being. Business associates of Marcus were praising his patience and devotion. Meanwhile, the affair, the lipstick stains, the weekly hotel room, none of that was mentioned. Not even a hint. My phone rang, my mother's number. Rachel, Linda Morgan's voice cracked on my name. I just saw the news. What is happening? Are you okay? I am fine, Mom. The article is lies. They are saying you had a breakdown. They are saying you need psychiatric help. I know what they are saying. It is not true. Then tell people the truth. Call the newspapers. Call someone. I closed my eyes. It is not that simple. Then explain it to me. Please, Rachel, I am scared for you. So I did. I told her everything, the affair, the prenup, the discovery, the divorce papers, and the ring in the bourbon glass. All of it. When I finished, my mother was silent for a long moment. I'm so sorry, she finally said. I am so sorry, baby girl. It is not your fault. I should have warned you more about men like him, about how they can make you disappear. You did warn me. I did not listen. What are you going to do? I looked around Denise's tiny apartment, the second-hand furniture, the cramped kitchen, the life I had left behind 7 years ago, now my only refuge. I am going to fight, I said. I do not know how yet, but I am not letting him win. Morgan women do not break, my mother said quietly. We bend, and then we spring back. I hung up and turned to Denise. I need to do something. I cannot just sit here while he destroys my reputation. What do you have in mind? I thought about my options. I had no money for public relations, no connections to journalists who might tell my side, no resources except my own voice and a smartphone. But sometimes that is enough. I'm going to post something, I said, something true. I did not have a public Instagram account. I had deleted social media years ago at Marcus's suggestion, something about privacy and protecting our family. Now I realized it was just another way he had isolated me. I created a new account, took a simple photo of myself sitting on Denise's couch, visibly pregnant, holding a cup of tea. No makeup, no filter, no pretense. The caption took me an hour to write. Starting over is terrifying, but staying in a lie is worse. To every woman who has been silenced, I see you. I believe you. And I promise the truth always finds its way out. I did not mention Marcus by name, did not detail the affair or the divorce, just a simple statement of solidarity and survival. "You sure about this?" Denise asked before I posted. I hit the button. "No, but I am doing it anyway." Within an hour, the post had 1,000 likes. By midnight, it had 50,000. By morning, it was everywhere. The narrative was shifting. People were questioning the original article. Women were sharing their own stories in the comments, stories of being gaslit, silenced, painted as crazy when they tried to speak their truth. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had some control. It lasted exactly 48 hours. The legal documents arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. I opened them at Denise's kitchen table, not understanding at first what I was reading. Then I understood, and my world collapsed. Marcus was filing for full custody of our unborn child. The motion claimed I was mentally unstable. It cited my erratic social media behavior as evidence of psychological disturbance. It included statements from 3 psychiatrists who had never met me, offering professional opinions about my fitness as a mother based solely on public reports. But the worst part was at the end. A court order freezing all shared assets and accounts. The $340 in my checking account, money I had transferred from our joint savings before leaving, was now inaccessible. I had nothing. I called Robert Hayes, my voice barely steady. "Can he do this?" Robert's answer was grim. "He can file whatever he wants. Whether a judge grants it is another matter. But Rachel, I need you to understand what you are up against. Marcus has unlimited resources. He can hire 100 lawyers, 1,000 experts. We have almost nothing," I finished for him. I was going to say limited options, but yes. I hung up and sat in silence for a long time. Denise found me an hour later, still staring at the papers. "How bad?" she asked. "He is trying to take my baby." "He cannot do that." "Can he?" "He has 3 psychiatrists ready to testify that I am unfit to be a mother. He has a judge willing to freeze every penny I have access to. He has the entire New York legal establishment on his payroll." I looked up at her, tears finally falling. "Denise, he is going to take my baby." She sat down beside me and pulled me into her arms. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "That man has money. That man has power. But he does not have what you have." "What is that?" "The truth. And people who believe in you." She held me tighter. "We are going to fight this. Your mother, me, everyone who knows the real you. We are going to fight. I do not know if we can win. Maybe not, but we are sure as hell going to try." That night, I lay awake in Denise's bed, one hand on my belly, talking to my daughter. "I do not know what is going to happen," I whispered. "I do not know if I can protect you the way I promised. But I need you to know something. No matter what they say about me, no matter what lies they tell, I will never stop fighting for you. Never." She kicked against my palm as if in response. "That is my girl," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Morgan women do not break. We bend, and then we spring back." I had to believe that was true, because right now, belief was all I had left. 3 weeks after the custody filing, a woman approached me outside a coffee shop in Brooklyn. I had left Denise's apartment for the first time in days, desperate for air that did not smell like desperation and microwave dinners. The morning was cold but clear, and I stood on the sidewalk clutching a decaf latte, trying to remember what normal felt like. "Mrs. Blackwell?" I turned. The woman was about 30, with light brown hair pulled back in a professional ponytail and nervous eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "My name is Rachel Morgan," I corrected automatically. I had stopped using his name. "Of course, I am sorry." She glanced around as if checking for observers. "My name is Maya Collins. I work at Harrison and Price, your husband's law firm." Every muscle in my body tensed. "What do you want?" "To help you." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but there are things in those files that are not right, things that could help your case. Why would you risk your job to tell me this?" Maya hesitated. "Because I have seen what he does to people, the women who disappear from his life, the deals that do not quite add up. And because my sister went through something similar with her ex-husband, Powerful man, expensive lawyers, custody threats. She lost everything. She met my eyes. I do not want to watch that happen again. I studied her face, looking for deception, finding only what appeared to be genuine concern. My father's voice echoed in my memory. Trust is earned, not given, but sometimes you have to take a chance on someone. What kind of things? I asked. I cannot say too much here, but look into the Greystone development deal from 2019. There is a reason it never went to court. And check page 47 of the original contracts. The numbers do not match the filed versions. Before I could respond, she pressed a business card into my hand and hurried away, disappearing into the morning crowd. I stared at the card, just her name and a phone number. Nothing else. When I got back to Denise's apartment, I called Robert Hayes. Greystone Development. I said, what do you know about it? Robert was quiet for a moment. That deal was supposed to be the biggest development in Brooklyn. Mixed use, affordable housing component, the works. Then it fell apart right before closing. Rumors of bribery, city officials on the take. Nothing was ever proven. Is there documentation? There is always documentation, but getting access to it is another matter. What if I told you someone inside his law firm offered to help? Another pause. I would tell you to be very careful. If Marcus finds out you are investigating him, he will use it against you. And if this person is not who they say they are, I know the risks. Do you? Because right now you are one misstep away from losing everything. I thought about my daughter, about the custody hearing scheduled for next month, about the 3 psychiatrists ready to testify that I was unfit. I am already losing everything, I said. At least this way, I'm fighting back. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a detective. I spent hours in public libraries, researching property records and corporate filings. I tracked down former Blackwell development employees, most of whom refused to talk. I followed every lead Maya Collins gave me, digging deeper into my husband's empire. What I found was troubling. The Greystone deal had collapsed after a whistleblower reported suspicious payments to city officials. But the whistleblower had recanted their statement weeks later, and the officials in question had received promotions instead of investigations. Someone had buried the truth, and I was starting to understand who. But the real revelation came when I found Claire Dawson. Claire had been Marcus's executive assistant 8 years ago, before I even met him. According to company records, she had resigned voluntarily to pursue other opportunities. According to a single mention in a buried legal filing, she had received a $500,000 settlement and signed a non-disclosure agreement. I found her in Vermont, working at a small bookstore in a town so quiet it made Millbrook look like Manhattan. She did not want to talk to me. I cannot, she said, her face pale beneath the fluorescent lights. I signed papers. If I say anything, I am not asking you to go public, I said. I just need to understand what happened. Claire glanced around the empty store. He destroyed my career. He made sure I could never work in real estate again. And when I tried to report what he did to me, he made sure no one believed me. What did he do? Her hands trembled. Does it matter? It was 8 years ago. Everyone has moved on. Not everyone. I placed my hand on my belly. I am having his daughter, and he is trying to take her from me. Claire's expression shifted. Something like recognition flickered in her tired eyes. He threatened you too, she said quietly. It was not a question. He is threatening everything I have. For a long moment, Claire just looked at me. Then she sighed. What do you need from me? The truth, whatever you can tell me, whatever you remember. She told me about the harassment, the threats, the way Marcus had twisted every complaint into evidence of her instability, about the lawyers who had descended like vultures, making it clear that her career, her reputation, her entire future depended on her silence. He made me feel like I was crazy, she whispered, like everything that happened was my fault. I reached across and squeezed her hand. You are not crazy, and neither am I. When I left Vermont, I had something I did not have before. A witness. Someone who could corroborate that Marcus Blackwell was not the devoted family man he pretended to be. I did not know yet that Claire's testimony would never see a courtroom, that Marcus's lawyers were already 3 steps ahead. That the paralegal who had seemed like a gift from heaven was actually a trap carefully designed to destroy me. But ignorance sometimes is what keeps us moving forward. Arden, and I needed to keep moving. 2 weeks after my trip to Vermont, Robert Hayes called with the unexpected news. A judge agreed to unfreeze some of your assets, he said. You have access to $20,000. I nearly dropped the phone. What? How? The court reviewed Marcus's filing and found his claims of your mental instability insufficiently supported. Without a formal psychiatric evaluation, he cannot freeze marital assets based on speculation. That is incredible. It gets better. The custody hearing has been postponed. His legal team requested more time to gather evidence. That gives us breathing room. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. That night, Denise and I actually cooked dinner instead of ordering takeout. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad, but it felt like a celebration. You see, Denise said, raising her water glass, I told you we could fight. We have not won anything yet. We have not lost either. Sometimes that is a victory. I touched my belly, now visibly rounded at 6 months. My daughter was moving more. Tiny kicks that reminded me why I was fighting. Maybe I am actually going to win this, I said. Looking back, I should have known better. In stories and in life, the moment you feel safe is exactly when everything falls apart. The trap was sprung 3 days later. I was at a coffee shop near Robert's office, reviewing the Greystone documents Maya Collins had helped me obtain. The evidence was damning. Falsified contracts, payments to offshore accounts, a paper trail that led directly to Marcus. My phone buzzed. A news alert. Billionaire Marcus Blackwell to hold press conference. Major announcement expected. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. I opened the live stream on my phone. Marcus stood behind a podium, surrounded by lawyers and public relations people. He looked tired. He looked sympathetic. He looked like a victim. This is the most difficult statement I have ever had to make, he began, his voice cracking with practiced emotion. As many of you know, my wife and I have been going through a challenging time. I have tried to handle this privately, out of respect for her and our unborn child. But recent events have forced me to speak publicly. He paused, dabbing at his eyes with a handkerchief. Over the past several weeks, my wife has been conducting a campaign of harassment against me and my business associates. She has fabricated financial documents, contacted former employees under false pretenses, and violated the court order prohibiting her from discussing our divorce publicly. The room erupted with questions. Marcus held up his hand. I have evidence of everything I am describing. Recorded conversations, falsified documents, testimony from the individuals she attempted to manipulate. A screen behind him lit up with images, the documents I had gathered, the recordings I did not know existed. Claire Dawson's face alongside a new statement claiming I had pressured her into lying. I love my wife, Marcus continued, but I have to protect my child. The evidence shows that Rachel is not well. She needs help, not a custody battle. I am asking the court to ensure our daughter is raised in a safe, stable environment. The stream ended. I sat frozen, the coffee shop noise fading to a dull roar. Maya Collins, the helpful paralegal. The woman who had approached me with concerned eyes and a business card. She had played me. Everything she had given me was designed to be traced back. The documents were altered to look like forgeries. The leads were breadcrumbs leading directly into Marcus's trap. I had thought I was investigating him. He had been investigating me. My phone rang. Robert Hayes. Rachel, where are you? At a coffee shop. I just saw the press conference. You need to come to my office now and do not talk to anyone on the way. 20 minutes later, I sat in Robert's conference room, still numb. How bad is it? I asked. Robert did not sugarcoat it. They are filing criminal charges, fabrication of evidence, witness tampering, violation of a court order. I did not fabricate anything. Those documents were given to me. I know, but we cannot prove that. The paralegal, Maya Collins, has already given a statement saying you approached her and demanded access to confidential files. That is a lie. It is her word against yours, and right now her word has Marcus Blackwell's resources behind it. I stared at the table. What happens now? If the charges stick, you could face up to 2 years in prison and any chance of custody. Gone, I finished. Not necessarily gone, but significantly damaged. I thought about my daughter, about the life I had promised her, about Morgan women who bend but do not break. But what happens when the bending goes too far? What happens when there is nothing left to spring back from? I need to think, I said. Rachel, we have limited time. I know. I stood up, suddenly unable to be in that office, that building, that reality for another second. I just need to think. I walked out into the cold afternoon air. Somewhere in the city, Marcus was celebrating his victory. Victoria Crane was probably by his side, wearing her predatory smile. Maya Collins was counting whatever payment she had received for destroying my life. And I was alone, pregnant, facing criminal charges, with no money, no witnesses, and no way out. That night on Denise's fire escape, I finally broke. Not bent, broke. I cried until there were no tears left, until my voice was raw from the sobs I could not contain, until I was empty of everything except despair. My phone buzzed, an unknown number, a text message. Don't give up. The truth has a way of finding the light. Check the Greystone files again. Page 47. A friend. I stared at the screen, not understanding. Someone else was watching. Someone who had not given up on me yet. The question was whether I could find them before Marcus found me. The arrest happened on a Thursday morning. I was making tea in Denise's kitchen when the knock came. 3 officers in uniform, a warrant for my arrest, handcuffs that were cold against my wrists. They let me change out of my pajamas, at least. Small mercies. The processing took hours. Fingerprints, photographs, the mugshot that would later appear on every tabloid website in the country. Pregnant woman arrested for harassment, the headlines would scream. Billionaire's wife faces criminal charges. They released me on bail that afternoon. Denise had emptied her savings account, $2,300 she had been putting aside for a vacation she would never take now. I will pay you back, I said, my voice hollow. Shut up, she replied, not unkindly. That is what friends are for. The next week brought catastrophe after catastrophe. Monday, the charges were officially filed. If convicted, I faced 2 years in federal prison. Wednesday, Marcus filed an emergency motion for full custody, citing my arrest as evidence of instability. A judge granted temporary custody to him, effective upon the baby's birth. Friday, Claire Dawson released a new public statement. She apologized for being manipulated by me. She praised Marcus for his patience and understanding. The woman who had wept in that Vermont bookstore, who had told me about the harassment and the threats and the silencing, had been bought or broken. I had no money left, no witnesses, no evidence that had not been twisted against me. And in 3 months, my daughter would be born and immediately taken from me. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped doing anything except staring at walls and trying to remember how to breathe. Denise found me on the fire escape at 3 in the morning, wrapped in a blanket, watching the city lights blur through my tears. Rachel, she sat down beside me. Talk to me. I did everything right, I whispered. I left him. I fought back. I told the truth. And he is still winning. He has not won yet. Has he not? I laughed, but it came out broken. He took my money. He took my reputation. He is going to take my baby. What else is there? Denise was quiet for a long moment. Your mother called me again, she finally said. She wanted to come up here, be with you. I told her to wait until you were ready. I am never going to be ready. Maybe not, but she is coming anyway. Said something about Morgan women and breaking. I almost smiled. Almost. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. It had been buzzing for days, reporters and lawyers and strangers who wanted a piece of my disaster. But Denise picked it up, and her face changed. Rachel, look at this. An unknown number, a text message. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m., the fountain in Washington Square Park. I have what you need. VC Victoria Crane. I stared at the screen, not believing what I was seeing. That is the mistress, I said. I know. Why would she want to help me? I do not know, but I think you need to find out. I should have been suspicious. After Maya Collins, after everything, I should have assumed it was another trap, but desperation makes you stupid. and I had nothing left to lose. The next morning, I went to Washington Square Park. Victoria Crane was waiting by the fountain, wrapped in a designer coat that probably cost more than Denise's rent. She looked different than I remembered. Smaller, less confident, almost afraid. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Give me one reason I should not walk away right now." Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Because we both want the same thing. We want Marcus Blackwell to pay for what he has done. You were sleeping with my husband. You helped destroy my marriage." "I know." She met my eyes. "And now he is destroying me." I studied her face. The careful makeup could not quite hide the dark circles under her eyes. The expensive clothes could not disguise the tension in her shoulders. "What happened?" I asked. "I found out I am not the only one." Victoria's voice was bitter. "While he was with me, he was also with Sandra Mitchell, his lawyer's wife. And apparently there were others before. I was never going to be Mrs. Blackwell. I was just entertainment, convenience, a transaction." "So you want revenge?" "I want justice. There is a difference." She pulled a flash drive from her pocket. "This is everything. The real Greystone documents, not the altered ones they fed you. Recordings of Marcus admitting to bribery. Proof that Maya Collins was hired to entrap you. And something else. Something that changes everything." "What?" "Marcus has a son, a 4-year-old boy named Lucas. His mother was paid $2 million to disappear. She signed a non-disclosure agreement and moved to Montana. Marcus has been hiding this child's existence for years." I felt the ground shift beneath me. "He has another child?" "He has a pattern: women who get close, women who threaten his image, women who need to be controlled or eliminated." Victoria pressed the flash drive into my hand. "I have spent 5 years building an insurance policy against him. I never thought I would need it. But he burned me, just like he burned you, just like he burned everyone eventually. Why should I trust you? You should not, but you should trust this." She gestured at the flash drive. "It is evidence, real evidence, enough to void your prenup, drop your charges, and expose him for what he really is." I looked at the small device in my palm. So much power, so much potential. "What do you want in return?" Victoria smiled coldly. "I want to watch him fall. That is enough." Behind us, the fountain splashed its endless rhythm. Around us, the city moved on, oblivious to the conspiracy forming on a park bench. "He is going to fight back," I said. "Of course he will. It could destroy both of us." "It could." Victoria stood, pulling her coat tighter. "But sometimes destruction is just another word for demolition. And on cleared ground, you can build something new." She walked away without looking back. I sat by the fountain for a long time, holding the flash drive, trying to understand what had just happened. An ally I never expected. Evidence I desperately needed. A chance I thought I had lost. Sometimes the universe is cruel, and sometimes, just when you think it has abandoned you completely, it throws you a lifeline from the most unlikely direction. The question was whether I could hold on tight enough to pull myself back up. Denise thought I was insane. "Let me make sure I understand this," she said, pacing her small living room. "The mistress, the woman who was sleeping with your husband for years, the woman who helped ruin your marriage, she just gave you evidence that could take him down. And you trust her?" "I do not trust her. I trust the evidence," which she could have faked. "Robert already verified it. The documents are authentic. The recordings are Marcus's voice. The payment records match bank transfers we can trace." I held up the flash drive. "This is real, Denise." She stopped pacing. "So what is the plan?" That was the question I had been wrestling with for 3 days. We had evidence, but evidence alone was not enough. Marcus had already proven he could twist the truth, silence witnesses, manipulate the narrative. If I just handed this to the media or the courts, his lawyers would bury it before anyone saw the real story. I needed a stage, a moment, something public enough that he could not control the aftermath. "The Blackwell Foundation Gala," I said. Denise stared at me. "You have got to be kidding. 500 of New York's most powerful people, every major media outlet, live streaming to thousands more." I pulled up the invitation on my phone, saying, An invitation that was obviously not extended to me, but that did not matter. He is receiving an award for family values in business. The irony is almost too perfect. You want to crash your estranged husband's award ceremony while you are 8 months pregnant, facing criminal charges, and expose him in front of everyone? Yes, that is insane. Probably. Denise sat down heavily on the couch. Okay, I am in. I blinked. Just like that? Rachel, I have watched you lose everything over the past 3 months. Your home, your money, your reputation. I have watched you break and put yourself back together. And I have watched you never, not once, give up on that baby girl. She met my eyes. If you say this is the way, then this is the way. What do you need from me? Your cousin Terrence still works catering at the Waldorf, right? She groaned. You want him to sneak you into a gala. I want him to get me past security. Once I am inside, the rest is up to me. And what about Victoria? Is she involved? She will be there as Marcus's date. She is going to connect the flash drive to the venue's AV system. When the moment comes, everything will be on screen for the whole room to see. Denise was quiet for a long moment. This could backfire, she finally said. Badly. I know. You could end up in prison for real. I know. You could lose your baby anyway. I placed my hand on my belly, where my daughter was kicking against my palm. If I do nothing, I lose her for certain, I said quietly. At least this way I am fighting. At least this way I can look her in the eyes someday and tell her that her mother did not give up. The night of the gala arrived faster than I expected. I stood in Denise's bathroom, looking at my reflection in the mirror. The dress was emerald green, borrowed from Denise's sister, altered to fit my pregnant body. My hair was down, styled simply. Minimal makeup. I did not want to look like I was trying to compete with the socialites and heiresses who would fill that ballroom. I wanted to look like exactly what I was, a woman who had lost everything and was fighting to get it back. Denise appeared in the doorway. You look like someone about to burn down a kingdom. Good. That is the plan. She handed me my phone. Terrence says you are on the catering list as Rachel Morris. VIP entrance, service hallway access. He will meet you by the kitchen. Thank you, Denise, for everything. Do not thank me yet. She pulled me into a fierce hug. Thank me after you win. The ride to the Waldorf took forever and no time at all. The city lights blurred past the taxi windows. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. I thought about my father teaching me to change a tire in our Ohio driveway, about my mother reading poetry while folding laundry, about every moment that had led to this one. Never depend on anyone to rescue you. Learn to rescue yourself. I was about to find out if I could. The VIP entrance was surprisingly easy. Terrence met me as promised, handed me a staff badge, and guided me through the service quarters until we reached a door that opened near the back of the grand ballroom. You have about 30 minutes before the award presentation, he whispered. After that, you are on your own. Thank you, Terrence. Just make him pay for what he did to you. He squeezed my shoulder. My mom always said the truth has a way of winning. Eventually. I slipped into the ballroom. The space was everything I remembered from years of attending these events. Crystal chandeliers dripping light, tables draped in white linen, Manhattan's elite in their finest, drinking champagne and pretending to care about whatever cause was being celebrated tonight. And there, at the center of it all, was Marcus. He looked perfect. Charcoal suit, silver cufflinks, that confident smile I had once found charming. Victoria Crane stood beside him in a gold dress, playing her role flawlessly. No one watching would guess she was carrying a flash drive that would destroy everything they were celebrating. I stayed near the edges of the room watching, waiting. The host took the stage. The speeches began. Recognition of donors, appreciation for supporters, the usual ritual of wealth congratulating itself. And then came the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we honor a man who exemplifies our foundation's values, a builder of communities, a pillar of family. Please welcome the recipient of this year's Excellence in Family Values Award, Marcus Blackwell. Applause filled the room. Marcus took the stage, humble and grateful. Family is everything to me, he said into the microphone. My greatest accomplishment is not the buildings I have constructed, but the values I stand for. I began walking forward. Victoria, watching from the side of the room, pressed a button on her phone, and the screens behind Marcus flickered to life. For a moment, no one understood what they were seeing. Documents appeared on the massive screens, financial records, wire transfers, legal filings, a cascade of evidence that made no sense to the untrained eye. Then the recording started, Marcus's voice, unmistakable, laughing about bribing city officials, discussing payoffs to silence former employees, mocking him as wife, calling me desperate and pathetic, wondering how long it would take before I gave up and accepted whatever crumbs he offered. The room fell silent. I stepped forward, my heels clicking against the floor like gunshots. "Good evening," I said, my voice carrying across the stunned ballroom. "My name is Rachel Morgan. You might know me as Crazy Rachel, or the unstable wife. I am here to tell you a different story." Marcus's face had gone white. He stood frozen on the stage, his award clutched in his hands, watching his empire collapse in real time. "For the past 3 months, my husband has waged a campaign to destroy me," I continued. "He hired people to feed me false evidence, then used that evidence to have me arrested. He convinced 3 psychiatrists who never met me to testify about my mental fitness. He filed for custody of our unborn daughter based on lies he manufactured himself." I gestured to the screens where the damning documents continued to scroll. "This is the truth. Bank records showing bribes to city officials, payments to a paralegal named Maya Collins to entrap me, and most disturbing of all, proof that Marcus Blackwell has been hiding a child for 4 years, a son named Lucas, whose mother was paid $2 million to disappear." The room erupted, cameras flashed, voices shouted questions. Security personnel tried to determine whether to remove me or Marcus or both. Marcus lunged for the AV controls. "This is lies. This is all fabricated." I turned to face him directly. "Then why is your lawyer already on the phone? Why is Victoria Crane, your mistress, standing in the corner with a flash drive that contains every original file?" All eyes turned to Victoria, who met Marcus's gaze with cold satisfaction. "You burned me," she said simply. "Now we are even." Marcus's face contorted with rage. "You are going to regret this, both of you. I will destroy—" "You cannot destroy me anymore," I interrupted. "I have nothing left to lose. You made sure of that." I placed my hand on my belly. "But our daughter is going to know the truth about who her father is, about what he did, about how her mother stood up and fought back even when everyone told her she could not win." The room was chaos now, reporters shouting questions, guests streaming toward the exits, security finally deciding to intervene, though it was far too late. I walked off the stage, head high, as the last of Marcus Blackwell's carefully constructed image crumbled around him. Denise was waiting outside, tears streaming down her face. "You did it," she said. "Rachel, you actually did it." We did it. All of us. The aftermath unfolded with stunning speed. 3 days after the gala, Marcus was arrested on multiple counts of bribery and fraud. The evidence Victoria had provided was corroborated by investigators who had apparently been looking into Blackwell development for months, just waiting for the right moment. All charges against me were dropped when Maya Collins admitted to entrapment, apparently hoping to negotiate leniency for her own role in the scheme. The prenuptial agreement was voided due to proven fraud. My lawyer secured a settlement of $40 million, plus full custody of our daughter. Claire Dawson released a new statement, the real one this time. She described what Marcus had done to her 8 years ago, and 6 other women came forward with similar stories. Marcus Blackwell, the man who had once ruled Manhattan real estate, faced 15 years in federal prison. But I did not think about him anymore. I had spent too many months letting him occupy space in my mind. It was time to take that space back. 1 month after the gala, my daughter was born. I named her Hope. She came into the world screaming, loud and fierce and demanding attention. The nurses laughed and said she knew exactly what she wanted. I held her tiny body against my chest and cried. Not tears of sadness this time, but of overwhelming, terrifying, beautiful joy. "Hey there, sweetheart," I whispered. "I am your mama, and I have been waiting for you for so long." Denise was in the room, of course. She had refused to leave my side since I went into labor 14 hours earlier. She is perfect, Denise said, wiping her own tears. She is. My mother arrived 2 hours later, having driven through the night from Ohio. She walked into the hospital room, took one look at her granddaughter, and burst into tears. "Oh, Rachel, she is beautiful." "She has Dad's chin," I said. "Look, that stubborn little jut." My mother laughed through her tears. "He would have loved her so much." I know. We sat together, 3 generations of Morgan women, passing hope between us, marveling at her tiny fingers and her fuzzy head, and the way she already seemed to know exactly who she was. "Morgan women do not break," my mother said quietly. "We bend," I replied, "and then we spring back." I looked at my daughter, so new to the world, so full of possibility. "I am going to teach her that," I said. "I am going to teach her everything, how to change a tire and how to stand up for herself and how to walk away from anyone who does not treat her with the respect she deserves." "You already are," my mother said. "You already are." 6 months later, I stood on a stage at Columbia University, addressing a room full of women who had gathered to hear my story. "I was told I had nothing," I said into the microphone. "No money, no resources, no chance." And for a while, I believed that. I believed that powerful men with expensive lawyers would always win, that the truth did not matter when the other side could afford to bury it. I paused, looking out at the faces before me. Young women, old women, women who had been through their own battles, and women who were just beginning to understand how hard those battles could be. But here is what I learned. The truth has a way of finding the light, not because the universe is fair, because it is not, but because people are stronger than we think. We bend under the weight of injustice and cruelty and betrayal. We bend until we think we will break. And then, when we are sure we cannot take any more, we discover something inside us that refuses to give up. I thought about Denise, who had opened her home without hesitation, about Victoria, who had chosen revenge over comfort, about Claire, who had finally found the courage to speak, about my mother, who had driven through the night to meet her granddaughter. I did not win because I was stronger than Marcus Blackwell. I won because I was not alone, because when everything fell apart, there were people who believed in me even when I did not believe in myself. I met the eyes of a young woman in the front row. She looked scared. She looked lost. She looked exactly like I had felt 3 months after leaving that penthouse. "If you are in a situation right now where you feel trapped," I said directly to her, "if you feel like there is no way out, like no one will believe you, like the person who is supposed to love you has all the power and you have none, I want you to hear this." I leaned forward. "You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. And you are not alone. There are people who will believe you. There are people who will fight for you. And there is a version of your future where you win. I know because I am living it." The applause that followed was not for me. It was for every woman in that room who had ever been made to feel small. Every woman who had ever been silenced. Every woman who had ever been told that her truth did not matter. And for my daughter sleeping peacefully in my mother's arms in the front row. For hope. 1 year after the gala, I was home. Not the penthouse that had been sold long ago, the money donated to organizations supporting domestic abuse survivors. Not Denise's cramped apartment in Queens either, though I would always be grateful for those months of refuge. Home was a brownstone in Brooklyn. 3 bedrooms, a small garden in the back, walls I had painted myself in colors that made me happy. Nothing extravagant, nothing designed to impress anyone. Just a place where hope could learn to walk and I could learn to breathe again. The Morgan Foundation, which I had started with part of my settlement, was growing faster than I had expected. We provided legal assistance to women trapped in abusive relationships, financial literacy programs for women rebuilding their lives, and emergency housing for those who needed to escape quickly. Denise had quit her nursing job to help me run it. We made a good team, as we always had. On this particular Tuesday afternoon, I was reviewing grant applications when the doorbell rang. A postal worker handed me a thick envelope. No return address. I opened it at the kitchen table while Hope played with blocks on the floor. Inside was a photograph. A little boy with dark hair and blue eyes that I recognized immediately. Marcus's eyes, and a letter. Dear Mrs. Morgan, it read, my name is Dorothy Reed. My daughter Samantha was the mother of Marcus Blackwell's son, Lucas. Samantha passed away 2 months ago from complications related to cancer. In her will, she named you as Lucas's guardian. I stopped reading, looked at the photograph again, at the face of a child I had never met. I know this must come as a shock, the letter continued. Samantha followed your story closely. She saw what you did, how you stood up against the man who had hurt so many women. She believed you were the kind of person who would give Lucas the life he deserved, the life she wanted for him but could never provide while bound by that agreement. There were legal documents attached, guardianship papers, a letter from Samantha herself written in the final weeks of her life. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, Samantha had written. I was paid to disappear, and I took the money. I was a coward, but my son is innocent. He did not choose his father, and he does not deserve to suffer for Marcus's sins. Please, if you can find it in your heart, give him the family I could not. Hope crawled over and grabbed my ankle, babbling happily. I looked at her, at the photograph of her half-brother, at the impossible request lying on my kitchen table. I thought about justice, about revenge, about cycles of pain that rippled out from men like Marcus, touching lives they would never even know about. And I thought about my father teaching me to change a tire in our Ohio driveway. Never depend on anyone to rescue you. Learn to rescue yourself. But sometimes I had learned you had to rescue others too, even when it was hard, even when it was not fair, even when the universe asked more of you than you thought you had to give. I picked up my phone and called Denise. I need your help with something, I said. Again? What is it this time? I think Hope is getting a brother. Silence on the other end. Then, girl, you are going to have to explain that one. I laughed. For the first time in what felt like days, I actually laughed. I will, but right now, I need you to come over. There is a lot to figure out. 3 months later, Lucas Reed Blackwell came to live with us. He was 5 years old, scared and confused, missing his mother and not understanding why a stranger had shown up to take him to a new home. The first weeks were hard. He cried at night. He refused to eat anything except chicken nuggets and applesauce. He flinched when anyone raised their voice. But slowly, day by day, he began to heal. Hope adored him from the moment she saw him. She would crawl over to wherever he was sitting and offer him her toys, her books, her stuffed animals. As if she understood, even at 15 months old, that her brother needed all the love she could give. And Lucas began to love her back. He would read to her from picture books, making up the words he did not know. He would carefully stack blocks for her to knock down, laughing when she squealed with delight. One evening about 4 months after he arrived, Lucas climbed onto the couch beside me while Hope napped in her crib. Rachel, he had never called me Mom. I did not push him. Yes, sweetheart? Am I going to have to leave? My heart broke a little. No, this is your home now. You are not going anywhere. But my daddy is in jail. I know. And my mommy is in heaven. I know that too. He was quiet for a moment, processing things no 5-year-old should have to process. Then who takes care of me? I pulled him close, wrapping my arms around his small body. I do. And Aunt Denise, and Grandma Linda, and Hope when she gets bigger. I kissed the top of his head. We are your family now, Lucas. And families take care of each other. Even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. He leaned into me, and I felt some of the tension leave his little shoulders. Okay, he said. Okay. 2 years later, I was standing on the balcony of our brownstone, watching Lucas and Hope play in the garden below. He was 7 now, she was 3, and they were absolutely inseparable. He pushed her on the swing set. She made him flower crowns from dandelions. They argued about whose turn it was to use the sprinkler and then forgot their argument 5 seconds later. Normal kids, normal life. Something I had once thought impossible. Denise came out to join me, holding 2 glasses of wine. You know, she said, handing me one, when you showed up at my apartment that night with 1 suitcase and $300, I never imagined we would end up here. Neither did I. Do you ever regret it, any of it? I thought about the question seriously. The pain, the humiliation, the nights I could not sleep and the mornings I could not get out of bed, The woman I had been before Marcus and the woman I had become after. No, I said finally, because all of it led to this. Below us, Lucas helped Hope climb the slide while she giggled uncontrollably. Morgan women do not break, Denise said. We bend, and then we spring back. And then we build something better. I smiled. And then we build something better. The sun was setting over Brooklyn, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere in a federal prison, Marcus Blackwell was beginning his second year of a 15-year sentence. Victoria Crane had moved to Paris, starting over in a city where no one knew her past. Claire Dawson was engaged to a kind man who treated her the way she deserved. And I was here, in a home I had built with my own hands, surrounded by family I had chosen and family that had chosen me. Raising two children who would grow up knowing that the truth matters, that standing up for yourself matters, that love is not about power or control, but about showing up every day, even when it is hard. Hope called up to me. Mama, look what I made. She held up a dandelion crown. Dandelion crown, crooked and falling apart, the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. It is gorgeous, sweetheart. Who is it for? For you, Mama, because you are the queen. I climbed down to the garden and let her place it on my head. Lucas laughed and said I looked silly. Hope glared at him with all the indignation a 3-year-old could muster. And I stood there wearing my dandelion crown, surrounded by my children, finally understanding something I had been searching for my whole life. This was not a happy ending. This was a happy beginning. Because sometimes the ending is not the end at all. Sometimes it is just the start of a bigger, messier, more beautiful story than you ever thought possible. And mine was just getting started. And that is where our story ends. Or maybe where it truly begins. If Rachel's journey touched something in you tonight, if you felt her pain, her fear, her refusal to give up, then you understand why stories like this matter. They remind us that we are stronger than we think, that the truth always finds a way, and that no matter how dark things get, there is always a path forward. If this story moved you, drop a comment below. Tell me, what would you have done in Rachel's shoes? I read every single one. And if you want more stories like this, stories of strength, betrayal, and the kind of comeback that changes everything, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because the next story might just be the one you needed to hear. Until next time, remember, you are not alone, and your story is not over yet.